through this. Easy for listening. I was able to do it. Easy for dancing. I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear. You're a disgrace, you are. Not me. That's my fear. You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to Shadowboxing. Today my guest is Ken Eastwood, Deputy Chair of the Western Suburb Alliances. How are you, Ken?
Good, thank you, Tibor. Very nice to be here.
Welcome in the program. Yes, tell us something about yourself. What's your background, Ken?
I'm an accountant. I'm actually retired, or retired in inverted commas, about 12 years ago. But I've been state and national president of CPA Australia, and I was awarded an AM for my services to the community and to the accounting profession in particular. And of recent times I've been involved in the Western Suburbs Alliance as a exercise in telling the community, if you like, what we see some of the problems are within the West Australian government at the moment.
So that's why we are here today to discuss some of these questions which the people may have at home and would like to have some answers.
Sure, Tibor. That's my role. I might say that government accounting is quite different to accounting in the commercial sector. There are different guidelines and certainly different principles to adhere to.
You say the government accounting is different from business accounting. Usually what's happening in the press, the people have been suggested that, you know, that's same as household accounting. You got income and you got spending. Is that true?
Well, it is true.
Or misleading?
No, it is true. Certainly we've got a pot of money in a household and a pot of money in the state, and we've got to make it fit the bill. I guess the difference between state accounting and commercial accounting is that you would rarely see a balance sheet for the state of Western Australia, for instance, which would support all of the states. Yes, that's right.
Why is that? Why do we not have a sort of more transparency?
The difficulty is in valuing some of the state-owned assets, such as parks, gardens, historical buildings, and infrastructure itself. It's very difficult to place any sort of a commercial value on those sorts of items. So
because you not necessarily can sell it.
Well, governments do sell them.
Yes, especially this government.
Well, sure, yes, and I think many governments attempt to sell these sorts of assets to get out of the debt, I suppose, that accumulates around them, and quite frankly, I think that might be one of the avenues this government might need to face up to in the not too distant future, if they're re-elected.
Or another government coming in.
Well, Tibor, we've got a state net debt of $25 billion, or we will have by the end of 2015, and that's risen from $3.6 billion in 2008, so that's nearly a 500% increase in 3.5 years.
When the Barnett government got the power of the government, I heard that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that time was $3.5 billion or around, not in debt, but in the surplus. Or was it debt?
No, it was debt. There was $3.6 billion of net state debt at that time.
Inherited by the government, the Barnett government.
That's right.
That looks quite low, you know, considering that was a Labour government, because Labour usually spends like crazy and leave the debt into the Liberals. But in this case now, we see something opposite has happened.
That's right. The Liberal Party, if you like, has generally been seen as astute money managers.
Exactly.
Which I must say is very difficult to recognise at present in our state. that figure of $3.6 billion of debt,
yes,
was in fact about 22% of the state's gross revenue for the year, and that's one of the ways of measuring the amount of debt a state has, the percentage of the annual revenue that the state
compared with the debt,
yes,
is what's telling you a story. So
That's
what
right.
is sort of healthy in government terms? Because in household terms, if you got, you know, your house or your mortgage and the cars and so on and so forth, sort of 30%, is everything is worth above 30% is not
well,
really good.
30% is reasonable, 50% is reasonable. I think it's wrong to say that we shouldn't have any debt. That's not,
Of course not, yes.
right. But by the end of 2015, our state debt will be 82% of our total revenue for the year. Now, 82%.
80%. You just repeat this number because it's hard to understand if it's possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've just said it was 22% to start with. It's now
Yes.
82%, or will
It's a
be.
huge jump, yes.
It's 4 times.
Four times. Is that healthy? 4 years, 4 times escalating the debt?
It's not healthy at that sort of a rate of incremental increase. It's a worry, frankly.
Not for this government, because they not seems to worry. They're just spending more and more each day.
Well, that's right. Some of the things, you know, we've got to have infrastructure, but some of the infrastructure that's been put in place or promised in the last 2 or 3 years is doing nothing for our estate economy, like, for instance, the waterfront development, Perth waterfront. Now, I know I'm going to be accused of being a fuddy-duddy, perhaps.
Why is that?
Well, because there are a lot of younger people who say, oh, this is vibrant, this is great for the state.
I see.
But here we are spending $440 million down there with no cultural and no social benefit, no commercial benefit for the state, and it's just makes you wonder why we would commit ourselves that sort of money when we've got a national, well, a state debt of $25 billion.
The benefit is there. We got the land is going to be sold, and that brings money, so what we're spending, we're going to get back. That's what they said. I think that was the concept, if I'm not misreading it.
Well, yes, that's right. That is what they're saying, Tibor. But the problem is that out of the Esplanade, or the Perth waterfront, there will be developed 9 blocks of land which will be sold to various commercial interests to develop. Now, those 9 blocks of land, the government has budgeted $170 million, which is about $20 million each. Now, in real terms, those blocks of land would be worth $60, $70, $80 million each.
So it's under budgeted, the price. So that's telling you the story. They're very clever people, because if they're selling it for over budget, for 20, which is a real price estimate, then they got the money back.
They'll get some of it back, but the problem is that whoever buys those blocks of land is going to have to build on them, and that's why the price has been discounted so dramatically, because it's been said it will be like building on porridge. So they want some compensation what they're going to have to spend to build.
Invest, yes.
And of course, if that frightens commercial interests off, then they won't buy them, and that will mean that instead of this thing costing a net $270 million, as we're being told, $440 million less $170 million from the sale of the land, we'll miss out on $170 million. And that'll be another $170 million we have to find.
What sort of interest we have to pay on that debt?
Well, as a comparison between 2008 and 2012, we're paying about 3.4% on the total debt, which is a very keen interest rate because it's a government borrowing. 3.4% on a debt of $3.6 billion to start with is $136 million a year. But when we get to 2015 and we're paying interest on $25 billion, the interest bill at that same rate will be $829 million a year. Now, that's a huge increase, and that means that's an extra $700 million a year that we've got to find that's not available for infrastructure.
So where we can find money to pay back the debt?
It's a problem, Keeble. I mean, a debt of 25 billion, the government budgets to make a surplus or a deficit each year. A surplus of $1 billion a year is possible, but any government that budgets for much more than that is not applying its revenue to the best possible solution. So the answer to your question is at $1 billion a year, it'll take 25 years to pay this debt off.
With the interest?
With the interest,
Yes.
may take 25, may take 35 years, because if our AAA credit rating is damaged, as it could well be when you borrow 82% of the state's revenue as a net debt, of course people like Moody's and Standard & Poor's are going to say, well, there's a risk that this government is not managing the economy in the manner that it should be. So they might say, well, your AAA credit rating will go to AA or A+ or something like that. One notch down will mean a 0.25% increase in interest rate.
Automatically.
Automatically. Now, if you increase the interest rate by 0.25%, it's an extra $62 million a year on top of those figures we talked about. 0.5% will be an extra $130 million a year. So it's a big ask to keep that AAA rating in place and make sure it is.
Few of our states already lost that.
Yes, South Australia has lost it just recently.
Queensland has lost it.
Queensland has lost it, and they are faced with borrowing money at much higher rates than we are at the moment. So that would mean that all of our infrastructure is going to be more costly, the debt will take longer to pay off, and none of that is good news, Tibor. No.
Not for the people who have to pay it back. And
No.
I think the people need to pay back the debt
Yes.
are the taxpayers.
Well, that's right. We'll have to pay it back. The taxpayers are the people who will have to fund it, and there's a few ways that can be done. Increase charges on water, electricity, transport, those sorts of things, or sell some assets. Like,
On that note, Ken,
Yes.
we have to go to a short break, but after the break, please stay with us and come back, because we continue the discussions on the state government's debt for the election 2013.